The first day, that military convoy only traveled 8 miles. Doing a deep dive into Cannonball Run history, I started going further and further back into the early, what they called transcontinental drives. The first one was done in 1903. And you have to remember back then you didn't have highway systems we have today. Some places you didn't have hardly any roads. And it was a huge push. It was called the Goods Roads Movement. It was actually started by bicycle enthusiasts to improve the network of trails and routes to traverse this country. And, we've all read the stories of Irwin Cannonball Baker and his exploits on his motorcycle, riding on train tracks, and things like that. There's one transcontinental drive that stands out to me is being the most historically significant that doesn't get a lot of news and press. It involves an Army convoy. And it started on the 4th of July from the ellipse of the lawn of the White House in Washington, D.C., and went all the way to San Francisco. It was a convoy of 80 military vehicles, or hopefully they would become military vehicles, to the manufacturers that built them and gave them to the Army to test. Several 5-ton trucks. Remember, in 1919, 5-ton vehicle was super, super heavy. And one of the vehicles was equipped with a blacksmith shop, and the other one had a wood shop. They had flatbed vehicles that carried metal and lumber and wood. They used this transcontinental drive for several different purposes. One, this was right after World War I, and they were trying to get new recruits into the Army. It was a test of motorized vehicles for military purposes. So they had a lot of different manufacturers building things. They wanted to get the government contracts. The government was leery of taking them on till the vehicles were tested. So this was a test of those vehicles. Well, there was one individual, a lieutenant colonel, who was given orders by General Leonard Wood to be an observer. And Lieutenant Colonel was a West Point graduate. He was hoping to be sent to Europe during World War I, wasn't able to go. The time he got his orders and got in place, he was actually a day late. He met the convoy in Maryland. The first day, that military convoy only traveled 8 miles. It took them over 80 days to get all the way to San Francisco, which, think about how fast we do the drives today. The purpose of those extra vehicles, the blacksmith shop and the wood shop, there was some places they had bridges crossing little streams or creeks. They had to stop, engineers get out, inspect these bridges to ensure they were strong enough to carry the weight of the vehicles. If they weren't, they would take the lumber and the metal, would reinforce these bridges so it was safe for them to drive across. Well, that lieutenant colonel had daily diaries of what he experienced. Every town along the way they stopped at, they treated it like a huge event for this town. They had bands, they had dances, they'd set out big dinners and meals and feed everyone. The soldiers were camping next to the trucks and their vehicles out in the town square. Harvey Firestone's tires, invited them to stop at his huge compound near Indianapolis and had their engineers talking with the drivers of these cars, and their biggest complaint was tire failure. Well, Firestone at the time their engineers were working on balloon tires, larger tires. The engineers went and got some, put these new type of tires on their cars, on the trucks, and they started having less tire failures. And those balloon tires became modern tires that we use today. That lieutenant colonel later became the supreme commander of Europe in World War II. And he later became the president of the United States. When he ran for become president, his move was to build the highway system for transportation like he experienced in Germany. And we now have the Eisenhower federal highway system in the United States directly because Dwight Eisenhower was an observer in this Army convoy trying to get across the country in 1919. And it was a huge basis on that because he saw how difficult it was and how long it took to move supplies and personnel from place to place in the United States. Over in Europe, they were decades ahead of us in building this system of highways, especially Germany. They saw the need long before we did. What took us 2 days to transport in this country took them less than half a day because they had a better network of roads. There was some Dodge trucks that they used on this run that were actually stood out as being the most useful. One of the vehicles they had, it was actually a metal tractor type, kind of like a bulldozer, we'd call it today. And whenever they would get stuck in mud or slide off in the ditches, that unit was one they used to pull everything out. Well, Eisenhower, he was a tank commander at the time, and tanks were a new thing. And he saw the utility and the value of those tracked vehicles in those rough environments. And he later became in charge of building the tanks and designing the tanks that was later used in World War II, that Patton became famous for. And so there's a lot of significant history. World War II history, our success there was directly related to that transcontinental drive.
Once again, I want to thank Bridgestone for their support of VINwiki this month, for their support of the channel, and all they're going to do with us throughout the year. We're going to test some tires, use some tires, and have them talk about what the tire business is like from their perspective and all the great things that Bridgestone is doing as a brand, including becoming an OEM offering on cars like Porsches, Lamborghinis, and things like that in the past couple of years. And so I know that you're going to love that, but I know that you'll also love their tires. And so whether you go to Tire Rack and order a set of Bridgestones for your car, or also check them out at the link in the description below, check out the Potenza range of tires for road cars, supercars, sports cars, hypercars. They are amazing, and I know they'll treat you well. Have a great day.